ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, good evening to those of you who are on their way home, maybe perhaps driving to or from work or school. Thank you for tuning in to Optimize My Life on the home of the Hope Network show. This is Dr. T's Philosophy Café show. It's a special edition to 9/11. Hopefully, those who are going to be participating in this memorial, in this special poignant episode, can call in today to area code 714-816-4686. I'm your host, Dr. Thomas Mallory Hill, Dr. T, and I want to thank Mary Stanley, the Hope Foundation, the Optimize My Life program for affording us the opportunity to spend a few minutes today in memory as we honor those who lost not only their lives in 9/11 on American soil, but for the hundreds of thousands, the millions of people throughout the world who may be experiencing some degree of an opportunity to set aside a moment in time to commemorate those who lost lives and what that day means. Good afternoon and good evening, Mary. I hope you're doing well, that you're surviving this week. It's been a special week for you.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. For some reason, your microphone is really bad.
I'm sorry to hear that.
You're really staticky.
Well, same microphone. I can hold on for a moment. You still can't hear me, Mary?
I can hear you. It's just you breaking up a lot. It may be the platform having issues.
No, what it is, Mr. Hill, are you using your earbuds with the microphone?
Same equipment, Mr. McKenzie. We started this process. Yeah, nothing's changed. Sometimes my network does get a little wonky, but apologize to the audience.
Like this. Quote, several allies and advisors who spoke to the New York Times anonymously said they saw
There's another background noise. Sorry, I don't know. Can you still hear me?
Yep, hang on. I'm taking care of the background noise. There you go.
Okay. And if at such time, Mary, if I'm still you just take over. But, yeah, I apologize for the technical difficulty.
It's all good.
But go ahead, Mary. Just go ahead and continue to open us up.
So Optimize My Life has a tradition that every year during basically any holiday or event, what we do is we honor those. And because of 9/11 being such a huge event, we take a week in all of our shows to honor those who sacrificed, respect and show our gratitude to those who gave selfless acts. Not just the survivors, but not just the first responders in the military, but everyday citizens who ran back into the burning building to pull people out, or making sure they had food. Just doing different. It's just our way of giving back and saying thanks, and teaching 9/11 is because so many organizations or schools do not teach it. And so our goal is to educate the generations of what it is.
So thank you, Mary, for that. I want to also add, we had a conversation yesterday, Mary and I, and with some other people on the Unraveling platform. I thought it was a very poignant moment in which people from all over the country, and including Canada, had a chance to express that moment. And I have to say, at this moment, I'm a little, what's the right word? I'm a little distracted in that I had a fairly early morning today, in my morning some people that I represent for the ASEA Redox team. Some sad news, but again, that's part and parcel of this memory. But they will be expressing their grief in a different way as Lavon Twyla Davis, who is an adopted teammate, just like you are, Mr. McKenzie, lost her mother last night at 9:50 p.m. And so my heart is a little heavy for my play adopted sister. But again, this is part of life. And although the memory of 9/11 and relative to the Twin Towers being bombed, Twyla Davis and her family now have to incorporate that day with many births on September 11th. Since that time, we're sharing that day in memoriam to the Davis family, to Twyla's family, on the passing of her mother. In that context, I was considering we never have this show scripted. I'm following pretty much Mary's lead, and am I coming across clearly, or am I still shaky?
You're still breaking up.
Yeah.
Don't know what I can do with that.
Offer a suggestion, please. Can you just speak into the phone? Are you using your phone?
I'm not using my phone. I'm using my computer. I don't use my phone. I would say that because of the other ambient noise in my household right now, that's why I'm using these headphones. I can do that when that ambient noise is deceased. So go ahead, Mary. I have something else I want to say, but I'll let you go ahead since I'm having some technical difficulties on my end.
Okay. I don't know. I lost my train of thought. You're all good. It's been a rough couple days for me, so.
Well, may I say something?
Yes,
always.
Go right ahead, Joe.
Well, 9/11, this one particularly was very emotional because the reading of the names, it becomes very monotonous over the years. But as a individual who, my wife got off the plane that morning at 8:45. When she walked out onto the street, bodies were coming down. She doesn't know how she got to her job a block away. And when she got to her job, the management says, "Don't worry about it, we're safe." And then a little bit after 9, the second plane hit, and shortly after that, when the building fell, her building got hit with some of the building that was falling down. So one of the young men said, "Look, we're going to get out of here." So the 22 people in his office, they made their way downstairs through all the rubble that was happening, walked a mile and a half, across the Brooklyn Bridge. At that time, most of the phones they're not AC, they're all DC. So the phone system was working. And all I can remember is getting a phone call, "Joe, meet me at Atlantic and Flatbush, but my coworkers will be there, pick us up and take us." Now, how I got there and did what I did, I do not remember. To this day, it's all blank. But let me just say this. It was a horrible day. I don't remember the rest of the day. In the day or two after that, I had a magazine business where we had 22 accounts down in the World Trade Wall Street District. All of them were closed down. The World Trade Building, of course, was destroyed. And several days later, after they set up the security and try to organize things, we were able to go down to see some of our customers that were open, that are reopened. And I'll never forget once sunset, I was looking toward the west, where the World Trade Center used to be. There were steel girders in the shape of a cross. I didn't take a picture, but to this day, that memory is burning in my mind all the time. And it made me realize, in spite of everything, there is a supreme being. There is a God. And this past memorial, like I said, it was very emotional because some of the people reading off the names were children that was 5, 6 years old, and they're grown now. Some of them who were teenagers, they have gone on to be firemen. That day we lost 354 firemen. And you might take it lightly about firemen running into a burning building, but that's exactly what they did. And after the whole thing was over, the cleanup was horrible with all the asbestos and things. And the people who did the recovery, it was unbelievable because they would work untiring hours. And there was, fortunately, America really came together. And Canal Street, which is maybe a half a mile up the road from the World Trade Center, they had food centers set up. Companies donated food and kept it going. And for America, ordinary America, people came from all over the country, overseas, to help with the cleanup. And what was crazy about this whole thing, they had a land dump over in Staten Island where they would take the wreckage and stuff. And they had people going over there. And do you know people have gotten sick from it, with all the asbestos? And fortunately, there's been a fund that's set up to take care of people who've been affected by 9/11. But my remembrance this day, it burns more and more, is that it is a day that we cannot forget. And I'm very happy that so many young people are following the footsteps of their aunts, the uncles, and the nephews. And it makes me really proud to be an American. God bless America.
Thank you, Joe. All lines are open. Area code 714-816-4686. You're welcome to call in. And for those who will be listening to this radio broadcast later in a post-recording view, I want to actually delve into just a couple of things because while I'm in Chicago, when that event happened, there were several other individuals who happened to have birthdays. I was also celebrating my first principalship in the Chicago public school system. It's a heady thing to obviously, have that kind of responsibility for an elementary school. But this particular school was special to me because in the year of 1963, another day that will kind of, as President Roosevelt talked about, infamy. In 1960, I was kindergarten at the very school that almost, 44 years later, I became its principal. Started in August. Excited. My mom and my dad, while they were separated and living in different states, were so elated that their oldest son, who is now a principal in the city of Chicago, at the very school that I started in kindergarten, had all kinds of memories for me. But I want to just can take a side road and say it was in that very building in 1963. We got news, not unlike we got on 9/11 of 2000, that President John Fitzgerald Kennedy was shot and assassinated. I had no clue what that meant. We were in third grade at that time. And as an 8-year-old, the country on television, similarly, loved President Kennedy. I couldn't vote. I was still, dealing with asthma about black people being attacked throughout the nation. My family was one of those families while we were in Chicago, running home from that very building because we were the only black family for 4 or 5 square city blocks. Those were the memories that I had. And someone mentioned that yesterday on an alignable event, that, oh, my goodness, the country came together. Yes, oh, my goodness, we lost lives, people jumping off planes. But you know what? Everybody didn't have that experience. And in 1963, I didn't. I just remember having to run home from school, having the word, the N-word plastered on our home and our garages. That was the time in 1963 that I lived. And fast forward to 2000 when this event happened, I am now that very principal of that school. And not only do I have my life on the line, as planes were coming from the Naval Air Base from Great Lakes, all I can remember was somebody was about to get there behind wood. At the images that the staff had brought the television to the main office, obviously our students were in school, staff in school, all kinds of clamor and confusion. And I was the principal of that school that I used to run home from in 1963. And yet, I have other people's lives in my hand. We're getting communications as much as we could to close the building, send everybody home, and where were they going to go? Because we couldn't communicate with a lot of people. So, for me, my personal memories were the lives of the people in a building that I had kindergartners through 5th grade, simultaneously to all of us. So I have a mixed bag, as someone mentioned yesterday, that if you happen to be of Muslim descent, black or white, that matter your skin tone, the anger and the angst that came about because we wanted to lay blame for who would cause such an event and a tragedy, and yet this show is trying to say to you, we want to explore how those moments of unimaginable loss can inspire both personal and societal reflection on what it means to live, to love, and rebuild. And then you're joining us on this show today that's affecting millions throughout the world. Everybody didn't have that experience. And the subsequent aftermath, us and Mary, you and others who joined the military to, as one person yesterday, Trevor Gibbs said, who's from Europe, has his perspective that I'm going to invoke and say, many people talk about giving their thank you for your service as military vets. Trevor's perspective was, I thank you for protecting the world. The first responders, military vets, because we all have had different visceral, as Joe just pointed out, still traumatic experiences, and yet that, sorry for the pun, guys, that does not take place of someone else's experiences that may not have experienced the loss. And again, I'm going to invoke Twyla Davis. She's not thinking about the people in New York. She's thinking about the loss of her mom and thousands, hundreds around the world who parents or siblings or that we may or may not know. I remember a quote on Facebook not long ago, maybe last week, that said, last night someone took their last breath as you were awakening this morning. Someone 2,000 years ago took his last breath, dying on a cross. The people were commanded to commemorate once a week, that we don't even consider those of us who are a believer or not, who's commemorating his death, burial, and resurrection. And yet, the memory of those on a particular date, 24, 25 years ago, we are having the opportunity to have and reflect on the profound impact, not only of that day, but other days as well. And the philosophical questions that Mary and those who are on Optimize My Life are asking, it raises things about life, loss, resilience, human capacity for hope in the face of tragedy. And I can tell you, as a public educator and academician, there are other histories that have not been taught, will not be taught, are not approved by local boards of education throughout this nation, as well as Canada and throughout this world. The powers that be invoke edicts. You will not have these conversations because parents of local communities will fight conversations that teachers may want to evoke, as they did with Black history, as they do with diversity, equity, and inclusion. Local boards of education, and I'm speaking to you as an active librarian member while I have not been at work for 33 months due to my own physical temporary disability. I can tell you that the American Library Association is under attack by local boards of education throughout our nation about the materials and the information that's accessible with our tax dollars to keep public, private, and school-funded and functional with information that is accessible or should be, but are being fought on the front with our own federal government, which is duplicitous. In one hand, because of our legislators, some groups are saying you cannot teach this, and we don't want you to have our children exposed. Another group is saying, oh no, we're going to let us have this material. So I say that from an educator and a personal point of view of being tolerant for all, observing the law of our nation and our state in which I live, in Illinois, to say, yes, while tragic, as I brought a point up yesterday, there's always going to be an elephant in the room of something not discussed than another, but just to even recognize that day is a fight, as John Stewart found, as it was pointed out yesterday, 20 years of a legislative battle just to get funding for those who have sustained injuries to their loved ones, to others, as Joe just pointed out earlier, that the aftermath and the cleanup, we're still fighting in some counties, states, cities around our 48 contiguous states, Alaska and Hawaii. We have tragedy throughout. So I want to segue. The area code is 714-816-4686. I want to introduce an idea to all of you today. Brian Moran and Michael Lennington are authors of a book called The 12-Week Year. They also have a New York Times best-selling book called Uncommon Accountability, a radical new approach to greater success and fulfillment by Wiley Publishers. I got this book some months ago, but I hadn't had reason other than I thought, Mary, for this show to have a conversation about. There was a few things that made me realize uncommon accountability, as Moran and Lennington disclosed, about what it means to be accountable. And perhaps I want to tie the two about memorials and having memories of being accountable, as someone also mentioned yesterday, for the next generation of children, students, that parents should be our personal accountability to keep those days or dates of memory alive in our respective communities. Let me read the back page of this. He says, in uncommon accountability, our own choice, personal accountability is the bedrock upon which all sustained success in life is built. Yet, what if nearly everything we have been taught about accountability is wrong? What if the prevailing notion of, quote, holding someone accountable, end quote, and being, quote, held accountable, end quote, are impossible? And instead of driving accountability, it's actually undermining. Accountability affects every aspect of your life. And the way you understand it may be keeping you from accomplishing what you are capable of. Accountability isn't about the use of force. It's about freedom. The freedom to choose your actions. The freedom to pursue what matters most to you in life. In the book Uncommon Accountability, this New York Times best-selling authors Brian P. Moran and Michael Lennington present a fresh perspective that has been vetted with thousands of individuals and organizations over nearly 20 years, 2 decades. Whether you are an individual looking to better your career, increase your income, or improve relationships, or a leader trying to inspire your team to accomplish what they are capable of, this book will show you how to powerfully shift your view of accountability in your life. So I'm going to kind of take a parenthetic pause to say, I think for me and for the subject of this show, that American citizens were looking for accountability, somebody to pay. We lost these people. Look what you did to us on our soil. And we went to war over what took place. And yet, as someone pointed out, I think it was Steve Kent, one of our Alignable ambassadors, raised the question, does anybody remember February 26, 1992? So for our callers, can anybody recall, other than Mary or myself, code 714-816-4686, what happened on February 26, 1992? Can anybody recall? So, for those of our post-recording audience, that was the day that a bombing occurred in New York City and was a prelude, years later, what took place in New York. That was brought back to, Steve Kent brought that back to our memories yesterday. I would say to you that what Lennington and Moran, and I'm introducing you to their work on common accountability, I would say to all of us today, take a moment to pause and ask, are you being accountable for the memory of 9/11? How are you exercising those memories, and what are you doing to share with your families if you feel that it's appropriate to do so? How are you doing that? How are you being held accountable? So I thought the title was catchy for me today, Uncommon Accountability. Go ahead, caller.
say, this is Joe McKenzie again. All I can say is when it comes to freedom, when the system, the government does not do what you want to do, you have to be a full participant. And in New York City, the New York school system, the powers to be, since 1970, 1980, what we call is dumbing down of the students. They just dropped money into the specialized high schools. They taught everything. There were 3 schools. And the rest of the school system, forget about it. Now, what happens to people who live in these underprivileged or not less than middle class environments? What do? They have to take it upon themselves to educate their kids. And what a lot of people do, they send them to, in New York City, it's been the Catholic Church and the Lutheran Church who has established all these communities over the years. And as the years progress, they're changed. They become the people who live there, the immigrants who live there, they moved out into the suburbs. But the church still remained in the ghetto, so to speak. And what did these churches do? They showed what Christ is about. They took the responsibility of educating kids. And particularly my kids. I went to a Lutheran school, and they did not teach black culture. And I didn't force the school to do it. I said, I don't care. I'll teach them what culture is about. I'll teach them about what music is about. I'll teach them about the history. And nowadays, there's so many books out there and films. In fact, at that time, Malcolm X came about, and my youngest daughter she says, Dad, do you know Malcolm X is the history of jazz? I said, what are you talking about? And when I started listening to it, she told me, she showed me where it is a history of jazz. Way back till modern day. And it made me realize that all you have to do is expose your kids to the right thing, and they will find able ways of relating to it in the new context. And even nowadays, when they're banning books and things like that, it's time for the parents who want to educate their kids, take the blinders off the eyes and let them see the world like it is. It's the individual parents. If you're in an area where your school doesn't believe in it, you can still buy the books that you want. There's no problem in that. The government can't take care of everybody, but they try to do the best. At times, right now, I think we're in a power struggle. It's between democracy and dictatorship. As simple as that. And it's everybody. Now, if you want to live like in a dictatorship, so be it. But I choose freedom. And it might not be what I want, but it's still the best thing, and we have to work. And I just encourage everybody, take a look at what's happening in America today and vote your conscience. You vote for the right thing. It's as simple as that.
Let me inject something, okay? And I want to give a tribute to Mary Stanley, because it was Mary Stanley and I. But when I met Mary, as she has on the Alignable platform and used it magnificently to empower other business professionals and business owners on that platform to maximize what the Hope Foundation and the Hope Network, much like you said with the Catholic and Lutheran organizations, Joe, Mary a key. And Mary's key is opening up opportunities for many of us who want to host. I never thought of it, but it was Mary's encouragement, Robin Edelman. There are many, many, many other people who have met me on Lineable, encourage me to use my voice, use this platform to amplify that voice. But I still want to come back and say, you hit it on the head, Joe. Mary Stanley, one woman in Minnesota, a little bitty voice, is now empowering hundreds of people to do what you just said, to honor 9/11. And not just because she's a veteran, that's just who Mary is. As a mother of neurodiverse children, parents who are neurodiverse, Mary is championing the cause of accountability on a human being, person by person basis, without slapping them upside the head with a baseball bat, although Mary has been chasing bullets for one part of her career. But I applaud her for her stance, and I applaud you, Joe, and others who do that. Mary, was that you in the background, or were you going to say something?
I was coughing, but I had to laugh. You know, a hand works just as well as a baseball bat, and you won't go to prison for it.
Well, continue, Mary, but I do. I am saying that to your credit. I love you. I applaud you. I support all that you can do. Mary, please, if it's not inappropriate, share with them what you shared with me about another platform that you're going to be using and the instrument that they did an article or you did an interview. Are you at privilege or privy to share that information with the audience? We'll be listening to this later.
So coming up around Christmas time, we are launching our. So we'll have the radio show, so only audio, but at the same time we'll be airing it live on Roku, Amazon, and Fire. So not only will we have the radio show, but we'll also have a TV channel to help uplift and educate. At the same time, starting October 1st is the date that we're working with so far. We're going to be launching a series of shows in the evenings called Building Bridges. And it's neurodiversity, for neurodiversity, by neurodiversity. So you have hosts that will be on autistic, on the spectrum. It will be different business aspects, different personal aspects, from mental health to finances. And on Fridays, it's for military, by military. And so we'll be talking about trauma and post-war syndrome or PTSD and how to overcome triggers or, you know, and regulation techniques. It's going to be a whole series of different things for different individuals. And if anyone has any suggestions, please feel free to join us on Facebook at Optimize My Life and put in your suggestions, because all our shows are created based on what viewers and listeners want to hear.
Mary, thanks, Mary, but I also meant there was something about a weekly distribution article or something else coming out.
Our radio show just been we've been running a promo or a article about Optimize My Life and the new shows coming out in LA Weekly.
In LA Weekly?
Correct.
Wow, Mary. You are doing what Erin Brockovich and other women who have a not just a bone to pick, but a stand to take. You are doing that, and so I applaud you, Mary, for doing that. So those who are in post-production, listening to this recording, I owe a debt of gratitude to Mary on too many fronts, and that's with her friendship and with the people who are on Alignable as members. I hope you take advantage, literally, but in a good way, of what Mary Stanley is bringing to the table. Let me segue. The area code is 714-816-4686. I want to go back to Miranda Lennington because Joe said something, and I want to kind of pivot just for a minute to say something about this uncommon accountability, but accountability in general. And I want you to hear this. Miranda and Lennington say that when we acknowledge our accountability, our focus shifts from defending our actions to learning from them. I'll say that again. When we acknowledge our accountability, our focus shifts from defending our actions to learning from them. Failures simply become feedback in an ongoing process of becoming excellent. Unfavorable circumstances and uncooperative people do not prohibit us from reaching our goals. I'll say that one again. Unfavorable circumstances and uncooperative people do not prohibit us from reaching our goals. We stand in a different way, thereby creating different results. Accountability is a life stance based on the understanding that you do not control circumstances and events, but you do control how you respond to them. Accountability begins that the quality of your choices determines the quality of your life. That's Moran and Lennington. So it echoes what Joe said a moment ago, and what my gratitude and tribute to Mary is. We can't change the circumstances that happened 20 plus years ago, or those events, but we can control how we respond to them. I think, ladies and gentlemen, as you listen to this broadcast today, and my introduction to Moran and Lennington's, whether it's this book called Uncommon Accountability, I don't often try to promote other people's work, but this is a case where you might want to pick this up. It was published in 22, Wiley Publishers. It's called Uncommon Accountability, A Radical New Approach to Greater Success and Fulfillment. One other thing I want to make mention, too, before I go on, the Alignable platform, while it's changing for many of us, I like the way Joe expresses what that relational platform does for many businesses and business professionals. If you have a boat and you want to be a fisher of men relative to business, it's the place to be, because the fish, Joe, is jump in the boat. Am I quoting you correctly, Mr. McKenzie?
Yes, sir. The fish is jumping in the boat.
You do not have to. Go ahead, Joe. Go ahead.
No, I said you don't have to worry about everything, because everybody's looking at the same goal, to be successful. And with Alignable, as long as you have value and produce a value on the Alignable platform, people automatically jump in your boat. They just come right to you.
He said they jump in the boat. I want to make just a personal observation. Excuse me, Joe. I have to make this announcement because with the organization that I represent, and I hold a team Zoom meeting, and again, if they're listening to this, it may be too late for today, but on Thursday evenings at 5:15 Central, I will be holding a team Zoom for Phyllis Bond's team for ASEA Redox. So we have a time change that we will be meeting at 5:15 p.m. and all are welcome, but it's an event that we want to share with people about ASEA Redox and what we do. And I'm going to say 100% of the people who I have on my team as of today, in fact, we met yesterday, are members of Alignable. They've chosen to jump in the boat. I represent them as well. And while I'm not trying to self-promote, I'm flat telling you, you want to be with people who can help change your lives. And as much as I'm promoting Mary and what she does for people, I very seldom do any kind of self-promotion. But another member on Alignable, and I will tell you her name is Moza Bella, last name Tram. Moza is a PR person who interviewed me from Fox News, an affiliate of Fox News in Miami, and that broadcast will be coming out soon. And Mary, we were promoting Optimize My Life and the Hope Foundation on that program, and that will be out soon. Moza Bella and many of the Naperville Alliance participant members are also going to be, hosting an event in Lisle, Illinois, L-I-S-L-E, Illinois, on October 9th and October 10th. I and members of our alliance were chosen by the Lineable company and their corporate people to help become participants in the panel. There's so much good that are coming that I want to talk about, because I kind of believe in one of those scriptures in James chapter 4 that said God gives grace to the humble and he resists the proud. So I'm not trying to be proud or arrogant, but we have done a lot of good work. I know I have. I'm not tooting my horn, but because Joe McKenzie said I have lit a fire in his belly as well as others, I just want to let you all know that that's what I try to keep people connected. We're doing good in our respective communities. We're choosing accountability. We're choosing to react, as Moran and Lenny say, to the extent that we are choosing to accept and make a difference. And one other just quick point, we got about 12 minutes, maybe 10 minutes left or so. I want to highlight another point that Lennington and Moran made, and if you want to just interrupt me, please do so at 714-816-4666. Lennington and Moran said this: there's a concept, in spite of all the challenges that arise, there remain significant benefits to intentionally directing our thinking. We found in our decades of experience helping our clients to achieve better results that there is an execution breakdown or struggle to achieve a certain outcome. And so he talked about the victim mindset, and I found that very intriguing. I'll just say this. If accountability, as they argue, he says in the last chapter, is such a powerful light stance, why do so few people feel fully to embrace it? That's a question that they grappled with for years. And he said, why do so many people seem to prefer to see themselves or portray themselves as victims of external factors instead of taking greater accountability for their choices and ultimately changing their lives for the better? Anybody got a comment on that? People are not accountable for their choices, but they should be. But if we do, it will in fact change our lives for the better. Go ahead, caller. If you're speaking, I can't hear you. All right. Well, I'll say this. This victim mindset, they say it's important to note that when they use the term victim mindset, they're referring to the generalized tendency of an individual to view unfavorable circumstances and poor results that are outside of their control. Go ahead, caller. Go right ahead.
I can say with the victim mindset, what I found from a victim mindset is that they don't have the mindset of overcoming. When you're a victim, there's nothing you can do. But a person who has a positive mindset, when something happens bad, instead of being a victim, they find a way of working out of it.
Joe, do you have a copy of this book? Because you just completed their next sentence.
Oh, no. You know what? You know what this whole thing is about? I came up very poor and didn't know it. And I'm 86 years old now, and I'm so grateful and happy that my dad instilled all these principles as a kid. So we grew up. When I was in school. I was going to school. I was always wondering why I was the only black kid in the class in the 50s. It wasn't until after I got out of high school that I realized that my town in Freeport, New York, was prejudiced. But I didn't go to a prejudiced school. When I went to school, there was prejudice there, but I didn't sense it. When somebody didn't treat me right, I let my dad know. when I fought and got in trouble, my dad went to school and they found out that I didn't start the fight, so they had to let me go. When a victim is that you don't have the tools to overcome or find a way out. But with the mindset, when something bad happens, that's just a learning step. That's just something learning. You learn how to overcome it.
Okay.
Coming in a victim, you fail 1,000 times, but the 1,001 time you're successful. Boom. What happens?
Okay.
The same thing. That's how life is. You just gotta, whatever happens bad to you, you learn to overcome it.
They said, Lennington and Moran, to conclude this, they say that this is not to be confused, this victim mindset, not to be confused with what psychologists say, okay, that are referred to as the victim or victim complex, which is related to people, as you kind of just indicated, Joe, who've experienced maybe real trauma that affects their view of the world. But Lennington and Moran say that children who have been abused, people who have been lied to by someone that they trust, victims of fraud or violence, that's not what they are referring to here in Uncommon Accountability. They're saying when we use the term victim, we're referring to individuals who fall short in some way and look to avoid their accountability in the situation. So much as you just said in your, much as you just shared, Joe, that's what they're saying. And we consider that sometimes our thinking is flawed. There was just one other quick passage that I thought I would share, and it says, as a leader, when you shift from accountability as consequences to accountability as personal ownership, key phrase, Joe, personal ownership, it changes the way you lead and manage. And that, if they had a picture of Mary Stanley and her name parenthetically in that last sentence I just read, that is exactly what Mary Stanley is doing with her programs Unalignable, with the businesses that's in the lives that she's touching. Mary has personal ownership, and it changes the way Mary is leading, and it's changing the way that Mary is managing, and it's changing the way of the people in her town of Minnesota, and it's changing the way that people see Mary on Alignable, and it's changing the way that we all live, move, and touch each other, because this episode was the brainchild of Mary Stanley. This episode is today, just to recall, that we are honoring the memory of 9/11, and that this poignant episode for Mary and for all of us, Joe and all of us, we reflected and are reflecting on the profound impact of that day, and we delved into some philosophical questions that it raised about life loss, resilience, and humanity's capacity for hope in the face of tragedy, which is why I thought this work by Moran and Lennington, Brian Moran and Michael Lennington, the book is entitled Uncommon Accountability, A Radical New Approach to Greater Success and Fulfillment. So it's not accountability like we used to think of, but just taking personal ownership. And then execution or executing on that will bring changes to people. So if you're listening to this call, in this post-recording, and you find yourselves lacking or maybe holding on to that victim mindset, do what Joe McKenzie just told you to do. Don't look up the circumstances that you cannot control or the things that you are that surround you. Look beyond that. Look inside. Look to yourself. Pull yourself up, as the saying goes in our culture, by your own bootstraps, and make a difference to the lives that are around you, the environment, in which you find yourself living. Therefore, and I think therein, fish will be jumping in your respective boats, as Joe says. And it doesn't just have to be unalignable. People will see you walking, talking, thinking, acting different. So at the conclusion of this broadcast today, we'll take a pause for, at least Dr. Hill will take a pause for about 10 or 15 minutes, make the necessary fluid adjustments, and we'll join those who are on and have access to our alignable meeting. I did not make that available to you here, and maybe I should, but for the moment I didn't, and maybe I'll announce it next week, that if you'd like to join us at 5:15 Central, 6:15 Eastern, just for your time zones, that's 3:15 on the Pacific, on the West, 4:15 Mountain. We will make that Zoom ID available to people so that if they would like to join us, that they can. If you're not a member on Alignable now, there are some special things going on. Different events, our in-person event numbers are increasing. People are experiencing all types of value given by the ambassadors and the various group leaders. I hope I can continue to do that for the Naperville Alliance group, particularly in October. We're so excited for that event that Alignable looked to me and to our alliance to be a host or a participant in that event. We'll be bringing you more information and details as we get them, but I'm just excited to be vertical. I'm happy to be with you today as your host. I am forever grateful for Mary Stanley and her family and her children who give her the time that she wasn't feeling well today, but she still braved the storm and was here today. And Mary, I thank you for participating. Anything else, Mary, you want to close out or share anything if you're still on? And if not for Mary, Joe, would you like to have a last 30 seconds?
All I can say is health is wealth. And that's mentally, health. Well, that's just it. Health is wealth, and God bless America.
Thank you, Joe, for your participation today. And for our audience, we still have about a minute left or so. All the top winners, just remember, too, that beginning in January of 2025, the Local Business Person of the Year contest, sometime around the first or second week in January, is going to kick off. You want to make sure that you are voting for others, for your local business alliances, or in your community. That contest is going to be on. And so if you'd like to be some of those top 20, top 50, top 100 of the 5,100 members plus, remember to vote locally for your people of the persons of the year in your area for what they've done for you. It's not a political contest, but you're saying through your vote of those who have contributed and are business leaders in your community. Thank you. So we'll be signing off shortly. Thank you all for spending the time today on September the 12th for our memorial program. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Post the link, please.